partying and drinking. This is what people think teenagers are all about these days. But what if we're just seeing the surface of it all? What if there's more to that? Before we dive deeper, who are we really talking about here? We're talking about teenagers, specifically in the late adolescence, around 18 to 20 years old. In late adolescence, teens seek to form their own identity and break away from grasps of those who raised them. An increase of concern for their future also happens in this stage of their lives. So, where does drinking fit into all of this? Drinking has become a common companion for adolescents in this particular stage of life. It has also become part of the norm to drink amongst friends wherever they have gatherings or parties. It has even come to the point where one has to drink to feel accepted. So what does drinking really do to the brain? Let's take a look.
Neurotransmitters are chemical messengers that transmit signals throughout the body that control thought processes, behavior, and emotion. There are two types of neurotransmitters: excitatory and inhibitory. Excitatory neurotransmitters stimulate brain electrical activity, while inhibitory decreases it. In drinking, a specific type of inhibitory neurotransmitter, called GABA, is made more potent, which causes the sluggish movements. At the same time, alcohol weakens the effect of the excitatory neurotransmitter, glutamate, which results in a similar type of physiological slowdown. Added to this, alcohol increases the amount of dopamine in the brain, which creates the feeling of pleasure when drinking. Let's look at other specific parts of the brain alcohol affects. The cerebral cortex is where the thought processing and consciousness are centered. By drinking too much alcohol, it slows down the processing of information from the eyes, ears, mouth, and other senses. This makes it difficult to think clearly. When drunk people start to lose their balance and can't stand up straight, the alcohol has affected the cerebellum, which is in charge of a person's center of movement and balance. The hypothalamus and pituitary gland coordinate automatic brain functions and hormone release. Alcohol depresses nerve centers in the hypothalamus that control sexual arousal and performance. This may cause sexual urge to increase, while sexual performance to decrease. Lastly, we have the medulla. This is the part of the brain that handles automatic functions such as breathing, consciousness, and body temperatures. By drinking alcohol, it induces sleepiness, may slow breathing, and lower body temperature.
So how does this really apply to adolescents who drink? There are a few common assumptions that surround this. First, due to our personalities and characteristics contained in genes, it is said that being an alcoholic can be genetically passed down. Another assumption is that drinking gets rid of anxiety and depression. People say that they drink to forget their worries, to feel less. Finally, alcoholism will lead to other negative behavior such as drug abuse, overeating, and antisocial criminality. I'm sorry to burst your bubble, but these assumptions aren't necessarily true. This doesn't mean that their drinking habits were passed down through their genes from their parents. Adolescence is a period of experimentation, wherein adolescents try to find out who they are and form their own identity. This is when they start to experiment, and some, if not most, experiment with alcohol. As they experiment with different things to find themselves, parent-teen conflicts tend to arise. Commonly, parents and teens do not get along with each other in this stage. This is necessary for the teen to learn how to live without relying on their parent. The most frequent issues that they face are trivial issues. Decisions that go against the parents, such as hairstyle, choice of clothing, taste in music, group of friends, and so on. As the teen is exploring for ways to cope with these conflicts, they might see drinking as an outlet and a possible form of rebellion. Teenagers have the tendency to want to revolt against the wishes of the parents because of constant disagreements. To add to conflicts at home, peer pressure among friends can also be the culprit of why teenagers fall into the habit of drinking. First is that adolescents wish to fit in with the social norm that they see around them, and this leads them to conform. Second is that adolescents might be asked by their friend groups. They choose to comply to what is asked from them by their peers. In this stage, adolescents stick to the status quo because the norm is what they believe is right and non-conformity is wrong. In the struggle of trying to find themselves, a teen still trying to find his or her identity might want to fit into a group. And as proximity to groups or peers who are bad influences increases, chances are teenagers will tend to mimic them. At this point in their lives, they are also introduced to more parties and social gatherings. Being around friends, most especially at social gatherings, elicits the unconditioned response of happiness, elation, freedom, or sense of belonging. Alcohol is the neutral stimulus that, when paired repeatedly with the unconditioned stimulus such as friends, will eventually be associated with elation, having a good time with them, freedom, and a sense of belonging, forming the conditioned response.
Having said all this, we can now see that there is no personality type that has been found to predispose a person to rely on drinking. This trait cannot be genetically passed down. It is not the biological aspect that leads adolescents to start drinking, but it is mostly due to their environment. We can look at this situation in a different perspective. Some personalities are now based on their drinking habits. Going back to the second assumption, drinking gets rid of the feeling of anxiety and depression. This is somewhat true. One of the main reasons why frequent drinkers consume alcohol is because they wish to effectively relieve their feeling of anxiety, tension, and depression. Epidemiological surveys find that most of those who abuse alcohol show variations in their alcohol abuse according to problems and other environmental pressures. According to the Life Process Alcohol Program, it does numb the feeling at least for a time, but it has been shown that one will experience greater anxiety and depression as the effects of the alcohol wear off. Moving on to the last assumption that alcoholism will lead to other negative behavior. This is also partly true. Susanna Callan discovered that young men in lower socioeconomic groups are far more frequently likely to drink and act out aggressively. Meanwhile, young, working-class men in certain ethnic categories, drunken misbehavior is typical, like this is a seeming rite of passage. This led to the conclusion that impulsiveness and antisocial acting out are related to social status. Stanton Peele, on the other hand, argued that addictions are equivalent. They may stem from similar personal impulses, but the form of addiction differs from each person's background or environment. This would only mean that the probability of a person to becoming addicted to one thing is equivalent to the probability of them being addicted to another thing. It all relies on the underlying disposition that takes a particular form in a given set of circumstances.